Chapter 1. The Fisherman's Lament. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow across the horizon as Finn Ardell sat alone in his small, battered boat. The engine sputtered softly, the sound barely disturbing the glass-like surface of the last remaining ocean. It was a quiet sea, eerily so. No fish leaped from the waters, no birds soared overhead. It was a vast, empty expanse, stretching as far as the eye could see. But beneath its surface, Finn believed there was still something worth fishing for. Finn was old now, older than most, who'd survived the Earth's last century of devastation. He'd been a fisherman all his life, long before the oceans had started to dry up and disappear. Back when Earth was vibrant and full of life, Finn had made his living on the sea, his hands calloused from decades of casting lines and hauling nets. The sea was his home, and he had never known a life away from it. But that world was long gone. Now, Finn was the last of his kind, the last fisherman on Earth. He had spent years casting his line into the desolate waters, hoping for a catch that would never come. Most would have called him foolish. Hell, he knew he was being foolish. But what else was left for him? The cities were ghost towns, the fertile lands now barren deserts, and the few surviving humans had retreated into their underground shelters, abandoning the surface world to its slow decay. Finn refused to join them. He wasn't made for living underground. The thought of being sealed away from the open sky, the wind, the sea, it was unbearable. So, he stayed in his small coastal shack, the last remnant of an old fishing village, and kept to the routine that had defined his life. Every day, without fail, he would take his boat out to the sea, cast his line, and wait. Waiting, as if the ocean might offer him one last gift before it, too, was gone. Today felt no different. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As Finn leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning the still water, his fishing rod was wedged firmly in its holder, the line disappearing into the depths, unmoving. For hours, he had felt nothing, not a tug, not a ripple. But then, a sound broke the silence, faint but unmistakable, a soft hum, as if the water itself were vibrating. Finn frowned and straightened up, staring out at the horizon. The sound grew louder, a low, resonating hum that seemed to come from beneath the boat. The surface of the water, previously calm and smooth, began to ripple, and Finn's pulse quickened. It wasn't the wind, and it certainly wasn't an ordinary fish. He grabbed the rod just as the line suddenly jerked, the force nearly pulling the rod from its holder. Finn's hands tightened around it, his heart pounding in his chest as the line went taut, stretching impossibly far into the ocean's depths. Whatever was on the other end of the line was massive. "God damn it," Finn muttered, bracing himself as the rod bent dangerously, threatening to snap. He hadn't felt a bite this strong in years. His muscles strained as he tried to reel it in, the gears of the reel groaning in protest. He stood up, his legs steady despite his age, and pulled with all the strength he had left. The boat rocked under the strain, water splashing against its sides as the thing on the other end of the line fought back. For what felt like hours, Finn struggled with the rod, sweat dripping down his weathered face. His arms burned with the effort, his old bones aching, but he wouldn't let go. He couldn't let go. There was something down there, something unlike anything he'd ever encountered in all his years of fishing. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the resistance eased, the tension on the line slackened, and the rod straightened out. Finn stumbled back, panting, his grip still firm on the reel. He peered over the edge of the boat, expecting to see, well, something. At first, there was nothing but the dark, murky water. The ripples from his struggle began to settle, and the surface smoothed out once again. Finn frowned. Had he lost it? Had the creature, whatever it was, escaped? Just as he was about to reel in the line, something began to rise from the depths. A soft glow, faint at first but steadily growing brighter, illuminated the water beneath the boat. Finn's breath caught in his throat as he watched the light grow, swirling with shades of blue and green, as if the ocean itself were coming to life. It was beautiful, in a way he hadn't seen in years, an almost otherworldly radiance that seemed too pure for the decaying world he lived in. And then she emerged. At first, Finn thought he was hallucinating. The figure that rose from the water was unlike anything he'd ever seen. And for a moment, he wondered if he had finally lost his mind. But no, she was real. She was too real. The woman's form broke the surface, her glowing, bioluminescent skin shimmering in the fading sunlight. She was tangled in his fishing net, her sleek, slender body bathed in the eerie glow that seemed to pulse from within her. Her long, flowing hair, a mix of silver and blue, floated around her as if suspended in the water. And her eyes, those luminous, alien eyes, stared up at him, wide and filled with something Finn couldn't quite place. Fear, curiosity, sadness. Finn's hand shook as he pulled her closer to the boat. The alien woman, there was no other word for her, was wrapped in the net, her arms and legs caught in the webbing, though she didn't seem to be struggling. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, as if she had expected this, as if she had been waiting for him. He knelt at the edge of the boat, staring down at her in disbelief. His mind raced with questions, but none of them made it past his lips. What was she? How had she ended up here, in the last ocean on Earth? And why did she feel familiar? The woman blinked slowly, her glowing eyes meeting his. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, the air around her shimmered, and Finn felt a strange warmth wash over him, like a wave of emotion that wasn't his own. And then, in his mind, he heard her voice. "You found me." Finn's heart skipped a beat. The voice was soft, gentle, but there was a weight to it, a sadness, a longing that seemed to echo through his very soul. He swallowed hard, his hands tightening around the edge of the boat as he stared down at her. "What?" His voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "What are you?" The woman's gaze softened, and for a moment, Finn thought he saw a flicker of a smile. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the net that held her, and with a gentle pull, the net unraveled, falling away from her body like water. "I am Aelara," she said, though her lips never moved. The words echoed in Finn's mind, clear and melodic. "And I've been waiting for you." Finn blinked, shaking his head as if to clear it. Waiting for him? What did that even mean? He wasn't anyone special. He was just an old fisherman, clinging to a dying world because he didn't know how to let go. But as he looked into her eyes, he realized that there was something deeper here, something that went beyond his understanding. This wasn't just a chance encounter. Aelara hadn't been caught by accident. She had been placed there, deep beneath the water, waiting for someone, waiting for him. "Why me?" Finn asked, his voice barely audible over the sound of the water lapping against the boat. Aelara floated closer, her glowing form casting a soft light across the boat. "Because you are the last," she said, her voice filled with a quiet sorrow. "And you are the key." Finn's brow furrowed in confusion. The key to what? The key to her? To the ocean? To something far greater? Before he could ask, Aelara reached out and took his hand in hers. Her touch was warm, despite the cold water around them, and in that moment, Finn felt a surge of energy flow through him, a connection, as if the ocean itself were speaking through her. "The ocean is dying," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "But it can be saved." "You can save it." Finn's heart raced. For years, he had watched the world crumble around him, powerless to stop it. He had seen the oceans dry up, the land turn to dust, and the few remaining survivors retreat underground. He had accepted it as inevitable, a fate that couldn't be changed. But now, as he looked into Aelara's eyes, he realized that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope, and he was the one who had to find it. Chapter 2. The Depths of Truth. The small boat rocked gently on the surface of the water as Finn sat in stunned silence, staring at the glowing woman before him. Aelara, she had called herself. Her bioluminescent form hovered just above the water, her hand still resting gently on his, the warmth of her touch spreading through his arm like the gentle ebb of a tide. Her words echoed in his mind, "You are the key." The ocean can be saved. Finn's throat tightened as he processed what she had said. Save the ocean? Him? A weathered old fisherman, the last of his kind, left clinging to a dying world because it was all he knew? How could he possibly save the ocean when the most advanced human scientists had long since given up? He was nobody, a relic of a world that had already moved on. But Aelara's eyes told a different story. There was no hesitation in her gaze, no doubt in her voice when she spoke of his role in the fate of the planet. She believed in him, and that belief, alien, mysterious, and completely foreign, somehow stirred something deep within him. A spark of hope, long dormant. "You don't understand," Finn finally said, his voice hoarse as he tried to pull his hand away. "I'm just a fisherman. I don't know anything about saving oceans or whatever this is." He gestured vaguely at her glowing form and the water that surrounded them. Feeling foolish. "I don't know why you think I'm the key, but I'm not." Aelara didn't let go of his hand. Her grip remained gentle, but firm, as though she could feel the weight of his doubts, and sought to ground him. Her gaze never wavered. "You underestimate yourself, Finn Ardell," she said, her voice as soft and soothing as the wind on a calm day. "I have waited for someone like you, a human who understands the sea, one who has lived by its rhythms, survived by its bounty, and respected its power. Your connection to the ocean is what makes you the key." Finn blinked, taken aback by her words. His connection to the sea? He had spent his whole life fishing its waters. Yes, but that hardly made him special. Plenty of fishermen had done the same, but they were all gone now, weren't they? He was the last one, the last fisherman on Earth. The ocean's dead. "Aelara?" Finn muttered, shaking his head. "It's been dying for years. I'm just hanging on because I don't know how to let go." Aelara's expression softened, and for the first time, Finn saw something akin to empathy flicker across her ethereal features. She floated closer, her glow casting ripples of light across the boat as she lowered her voice. "The ocean is not dead," she said, her voice carrying a quiet intensity. "It sleeps. Beneath the surface, deep within the last waters of this world, lies a power that can restore what has been lost. But it cannot awaken without your help." Finn frowned. "What are you talking about? What kind of power?" Aelara hesitated for the briefest of moments, as if gathering her thoughts. Then, with a graceful motion, she raised her free hand and pointed toward the horizon. Finn followed her gaze and saw nothing but water stretching endlessly into the distance. As it always had. The oceans of Earth were not always as they are now, Aelara explained, her voice calm but laced with an ancient sorrow. "Long ago, before humanity's time, my people, the Australians, lived in harmony with these waters. We shared them with the planet, drawing power from the ocean's depths while ensuring its balance remained intact. But over time, we grew arrogant. We thought we could control the ocean's power, shape it to our will, and in doing so, we disrupted the delicate equilibrium that sustained both our species and yours." Finn turned to look at her again, his heart pounding in his chest. "You're telling me you're the reason the oceans dried up? That your people caused all this?" Aelara's luminous eyes lowered, her expression heavy with regret. "Not intentionally, but yes, in our efforts to harness the ocean's energy, we destabilized the very forces that kept it alive. When we realized what we had done, it was too late. The damage was already done, and the oceans began to disappear, one by one." Finn felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. This alien woman and her people were responsible for the death of the very thing he had dedicated his life to. The seas that had once been his livelihood, his home, had been destroyed because of them. "But why are you telling me this now?" he demanded, his voice rough with frustration. "What's the point of telling me all this if there's nothing left to save?" Aelara met his gaze once again, her eyes filled with an almost desperate hope, because the ocean can still be saved. "Finn," she said urgently, "there is a source of power deep beneath the last sea, a reservoir of energy that my people created to protect the ocean in case of catastrophe. It has been hidden for millennia, but it still exists, and only a human, one who is deeply connected to the ocean, can unlock it. Finn's mind reeled as he processed her words. A hidden source of energy? Deep beneath the ocean? It sounded like something out of an old sailor's tale, one of the legends his grandfather used to tell him as a boy. But here was Aelara, an alien creature from a civilization older than his own, telling him that those stories held some truth, that there was still hope for the ocean, for the world. If he could just unlock this ancient power. He stared at her, trying to make sense of it all. And you think I can do that? Why me? Aelara's glowing hand tightened slightly around his, and her expression softened. Because you are the last, she said quietly, the last human who has not given up on the sea. You may think you've stayed out here out of habit, out of stubbornness, but your bond with the ocean runs deeper than that. You are connected to it in ways even you do not understand. That connection is what can save it. Finn shook his head, his mind still spinning. It was too much to take in. He was just an old man, a fisherman holding on to a dying world because he didn't know what else to do. And yet, the way Aelara looked at him, the way she spoke, it was as if she truly believed he was the answer. For a long moment, Finn was silent, his eyes drifting over the dark waters surrounding them. The sky above was growing dimmer, the sun dipping below the horizon, leaving only a faint glow in its wake. The stars were beginning to peek through, distant and cold, watching over a world on the brink of collapse. Could it really be true? Could there still be hope for Earth? For the ocean? He looked back at Aelara, who waited patiently, her glowing form casting a soft light across the boat. She was still holding his hand, her touch warm and steady, like an anchor in the storm of his thoughts. If I do this, Finn said slowly, if I help you unlock this power, what happens then? Will it be enough to bring the ocean back? Aelara hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. I cannot promise the full restoration of what has been lost, she admitted, but I know that it is the only chance we have. If we can release the energy from the depths, it will spark a revival, a rebirth of the seas. But it will not be easy. The path is dangerous, and there are forces, both natural and unnatural, that will try to stop us. Great, Finn muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. So, not only do I have to figure out how to save the ocean, but I'll also have to deal with whatever ancient monsters or traps are down there, waiting to kill us. Aelara gave him a small, rueful smile. I will be with you. Finn, I will guide you. But yes, there will be risks. Finn sighed, feeling the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a scientist or a soldier or anything that could make a real difference in the world. He was just a fisherman, an old man with nothing left but his memories and the sea. And yet, here he was, being asked to take on a mission that might very well decide the fate of the planet. Aelara's eyes softened as she spoke, her voice gentle. You are stronger than you think. Finn, the ocean has not forgotten you, and neither have I. For the first time in a long while, Finn felt something stir inside him. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the desire to do something, anything that mattered. Either way, he knew that sitting here in his boat, casting lines into an empty sea, wasn't going to change anything. If there was even a sliver of a chance to save the ocean, to restore what had been lost, then he had to try. He looked at Aelara, his jaw set with new determination. All right, he said gruffly, let's do this. But you better know what you're talking about, because I've got no idea what I'm getting into. Aelara smiled, her eyes glowing softly. I do, she said simply. Thank you. Finn, you have already made the first step. Now, we must prepare for the journey ahead. Finn nodded, feeling a strange sense of resolve settle over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was headed somewhere, like there was a purpose to all of this. As the boat drifted in the growing darkness, the glow of the alien woman beside him lit up the sea around them, casting light on a future that had once seemed impossible. And deep below the surface, something ancient stirred. The journey had begun. Part 1, consisting of Chapter 1 and 2, is complete. Stay tuned for Chapter 3 and 4. The video Part 2 will be released soon. Thank you.